Welcome back to Let's Talk. Let's Talk episode 22. Let's talk about super moms. Today I have with me Amy Grace. Amy, which you actually have the same name as my mom, so it's a little freaky. But why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the people?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. So, as she said, my name is Amy Grace, and I am a licensed therapist, a mom, and I offer coaching to moms, as well as I'm the host of Everyday Super Moms. So, motherhood is my jam. I've been a mom for more than half of my life. I've been working with them and supporting moms in a variety of roles for over 20 years. And it is my greatest passion to help moms to be the best version of themselves because when we thrive, so does the whole rest of the world.
Ooh, I love that. I love that. And I also feel like being a mom, I didn't really realize this. So I'm a very new mom. My daughter's only 14 months old. And so I think there's a lot of things I didn't realize about motherhood until I'm like freshly in it. But I think one of the biggest things is that it can be really easy to lose who you are as a person and as an individual because I go from being Anna and then I go to being Anna to pregnant Anna. And that's how people view you is you're pregnant. They don't view anything else about you other than you're pregnant. And then they view you as new mom Anna and then they view you as mom Anna and then your mom Anna, for the rest of your
Hmm.
life. And it can be really easy to fall into that mentality of like that's all that I am. And then it's like when you divulge into other things like, oh, I have this passion or oh, I have this hobby, you almost feel like this immense amount of guilt that comes with that. Like I was just
Hmm.
telling you before we got started, I come up here to record my show and my daughter's down there, we're in a mama phase and she's like screaming her head off and I'm almost like feeling this immense amount of like shame and guilt on my shoulders. But I'm like, but she's fine. She's with her dad, I'm not just leaving her down there by herself. And so to get started, so people know a little bit more about you, talk to me about, your motherhood journey. Talk to me a little bit about how maybe that guilt set in for you and maybe how you overcame that or maybe how you're still overcoming that.
Yeah, oh, such great questions. So, my motherhood journey started really early in life. I was actually a freshman in college when I had one crazy night and got pregnant. And That was not part of my plan at all. I was a young freshman too, so I was only 17, and I was a new Christian, and I had this whole life laid out for me. I was actually pre-med at the time, and I had this vision. And then literally, it was one night, I've said, like, her bio dad went from virgin to father in 30 seconds. And so, like, it was one crazy night, and it was, you know, earth shattering, honestly, because I was not somebody who grew up like, I can't wait to be a mom. Like, it
Mm,
wasn't that I didn't want to be a mom, it was just like not part of the plan. Like, it wasn't something I had really thought about. It was like, well, yeah, probably eventually, but I've got med school and I've got all these other things. So when I found out I was pregnant, for me, I had to really wrestle with was I going to choose parenting or adoption? And so I spent approximately, I don't know, let me do math real quick. 24 weeks of my pregnancy trying to figure out what I was going to choose. And for me, that was a big part of a faith journey for me, in that I had gotten to a place where I was like, God, clearly I don't make good decisions for myself, so I'm not going to make this one. Um, and so I need you to. And I was like waiting for some sort of like neon sign above my bed, like flashing at me, like, here's what you're gonna do, parent, or you're gonna adopt, like, really obvious. But, and God did make it abundantly clear. He made it abundantly clear at the end of my pregnancy. I chose to parent her literally 1 week before she was born. So, but yeah, so I chose to parent and I had her 2 weeks before I turned 18. So I was a wee babe myself.
wow.
Um, and it was like at the time I was like, this is crazy. Like, I'm still a child myself. Literally, to get out of the hospital, my mom had to sign my discharge papers, and then I had to sign the ones for my baby because I was a
You're like,
minor.
this is the forever babysitting job, the babysitting job that
Yeah,
never ends.
yeah. So, but yeah, I had a lot of people tell me, if you choose to parent this child, you'll never, and then like long lists of things, like you'll never graduate from college, you'll never, you know, meet somebody and get married. You'll never, like all sorts of things. Or they throw the other way, like you'll end up in poverty and you'll end up like all these other statistics. Did you know kids of teenage moms, they're like twice as likely to become addicts or whatever things people would tell me. And I was like, I don't think God would like urge me to parent this child if he didn't have a plan for her.
Hmm.
So I became a mom literally as I became an adult. And like I said, she is about to turn 26 at the time of this taping. So like she is an amazing grown human. I finished undergrad in the traditional 4 years with two majors and a 3-year-old kid in the top 5% of my class because I'm so stubborn that I was like, not only am I going to show you that I can do this, but I'm going to kick butt at it. Um, so that was kind of my transition to motherhood. And so it wasn't a traditional journey by any stretch, right? Like, um, her bio dad was immediately, he wasn't even in my life by the time I gave birth to her. By the
Wow.
time I started showing, he was out. And so when I chose to parent, I chose to parent on my own. And I knew that that was the case. I knew there was no chance for us for a lot of reasons. And so ultimately, I chose to parent her. And so I was kind of navigating it all on my own. And, you know, nowadays, I can't even go like a couple hours without Googling something. Back then, Google wasn't a thing. Like, let me just put this into perspective. Like, if you don't know what to do with your baby, you had to find a book and find the right chapter. Like, there was no, like, hold on, let me text my friend. What do you do if? There was no texting. There was no Google. There was no social media. There was none of that. It was like, I call my mom or I read a book. That's what I got. So that was kind of my journey. And all the people around me were all these young college students. So it wasn't like I had a community of other mothers either. It wasn't until
Hmm.
she was about 4 that I started making mom friends. And that was when I really started, like, I loved my baby and I was in love with being her mom. But it wasn't until I really started having mom friends and other people that I could share life with that I really started going, oh, motherhood's amazing. Because I'm part of a group of other mothers. I have other people I can ask questions to, and it was amazing.
Wow. There's a lot of, my dad was born to a 15-year-old mom. And so listening to your story and kind of thinking about that at the same time, because a lot of people, because of her age and everything, told her the exact same thing, just for adoption or, the even worse option, which would be abortion,
Mm-hmm.
like just to absolutely, get rid of that child. And so listening to your story and kind of listening about that and just how you watch these humans that people told you to not raise, to either get rid of, or oh, this was the worst decision of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm watching them grow up and obviously thinking about my dad. If my dad had grown up, I wouldn't be here and my daughter wouldn't be here and all of these things wouldn't have
Mm-hmm.
happened. And so it's incredible listening to that story. I mean, so going into so you are a fresh young mom, going into college, and you
Mm-hmm.
were talking about kind of meeting mom friends. So I was going to talk about this a little bit later, but I think I'm going to go into it now. So now that you are a seasoned mother yourself, what is it about making mom friends that can be so difficult? Because I have also, with my like select few mom friends, I'm thinking of the two I have, they've said the same things. They've
Mm-hmm.
said, and they've got older kiddos who can at least like go and run around and talk and communicate with other children. And I just was at a garage sale with one of my mom friends the other day, and she was telling me she struggles to communicate with some of these people and talk with some of these moms because they're either, super clicky, or it's like, why are you not wanting to talk to me? Like, don't you want to be my friend because you're a mom too? Like, so what is it about finding mom friends that can be so hard?
I think there's a lot of factors, honestly. And I think it's harder in some mom stages than others. So I think a couple of things that I would point to is one is stage of life. They say that a true deep friendship takes 200 hours to really build. Uh, Moms don't have 200 hours to build a friendship. Like, we are like happy if we get 0.2 hours. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we look at it, like that piece alone makes it a challenge, is that like true deep friendship usually requires time, proximity, so many like really important little factors that we don't have easy access to as moms. And so that's one piece of it. Part of it is just stage of life. Like, honestly, I think I had an easier time making mom friends when my kids were little. So, like, when you're little, they tend to be more things like play groups or, story hour at the libraries, or I was really involved with MOPS. Now it's MomCo, which was a fantastic organization and where I met a lot of my mom friends. And so, like, being involved in, there's a lot more opportunities that are kind of built for support for the young moms. So I think the young moms, if you haven't found any of those organizations, I highly encourage you to look up MomCo because it's a great one for building mom friends. Um, but also, like, just little things like, you're more often like in the proximity of other moms when your kids are little because you're there with your kid. So, like, if you're at a playground, you look to the left, there's another mom of another kid. Like, you just have to be brave enough to be like, hey, how's it going? Like, and it still has all the awkwardness of like making friends at any other stage,
Yeah.
but at least that you're there. Where I often see moms really struggling is like once your kids are in school, because
Mm.
you tend to not then be there all the time. You tend to have them at school and then you're rushing around and then they're in activities and you're go, go, go. Even less time, even less presence, even less proximity. And so I think there's that. Then there's the reality that people do things differently, right? So like when moms are in each other's spaces, some moms are more judgy than others. And some moms are super sensitive to anything that feels like it could be judgy. And so like, oh, you're a crunchy mom? No, I am all about the formula and my paper diapers, thank you, or whatever. And so like there can be
Yes.
this like we're on different teams rather than seeing each other as we're all in this together. Like let's see if we can get through this and support each other. So I think that there's a lot of different factors that play into it. But I think ultimately, finding people slowly but steady, keep putting yourself out there, even if you've had some disappointments, even if you've tried to connect with some moms and it didn't go so great, like trying to continue to put yourself out there again and again until you're at the point where you're like, oh, I've got a couple of mom friends. You don't need 20 mom friends. Nobody has time for that. Um, and you definitely don't want 20 moms and all of their kids in the same room anyway. Like,
Yes. Yes.
so
Well, it's
like,
also it also feels like dating. Like just it almost like being like finding mom friends feels like you're back in this dating field where you're like also trying to find people that have the same interests as you. It almost feels like a first date over and over and over and over and over again. Like, "Hi, I'm Anna. My favorite color is this. I give my child this and yeah, that's about it. What do you give your kid?" And it's like
yeah.
over and over and over again until you find the right one. And I want to circle back to something that you said as well when, you were trying to decide between giving your child up for adoption and being a mom and just some of the like the comments that you were getting about being a mom just in general. I'm 24,
Hmm.
so I even to this culture I would be considered a pretty young mom as well.
Hmm.
I had my daughter Autumn when I was 23, and
Hmm.
so a lot of people they're like, wow, that is extremely young. And I just had a friend too the other day tell me that she was talking to a group of ladies and she was like, and she's the same age as me and she was considering, I think I'm going to, try for a baby soon. I really want to have a baby when I'm younger. And moms, experienced moms telling her, "Oh, you need to wait to do that. That's a bad decision. Don't have a child yet." All of this stuff. And there's so much negativity about moms in our culture today, which strikes me as completely odd because you'd think that we are like the most female empowered culture we've ever been. We're incredible, like in this new age, us dainty women can actually have jobs and have a child at the same time. I know that's crazy. But, I talked about this a couple episodes ago that a popular singer, Chapel Rowan, like went on a podcast, Call Her Daddy, and discussed how, all young moms are in hell, and she said this quote, all young moms I know are in hell, everybody that I know hates it. Nobody could be young and have children. How can they stand it? And so I think that that negativity, comes from maybe a misunderstanding, but it also just comes from this like absolute, and I don't understand it, and that's what I'm going to ask you, this just absolute negativity towards moms. So where do you think that this negativity is coming from? Why do you think women are being so discouraged into becoming mothers, when I personally think it's the biggest blessing and genuinely the most amazing thing that I've ever done in my life is
Yeah.
giving birth and being a mom.
Yeah. You know, again, we all have our own baggage, first of all. And I think there is a reality that, in the 70s and 80s, when it started to be a lot more like female power, which is awesome, and look, we can have jobs and we can even have our own bank accounts and like crazy things like that.
Yes.
As those things started happening, what started to happen was that there is a certain reality that we still only have 24 hours in a day. And
Mm.
so if you're going to say, yay, moms can work full time and we can also be moms, it's like, yeah, totally, 100% agree. And those working full time moms don't have as many hours per day to spend with their kids as the stay at home moms. It's just a fact. There's less hours there, right? And I think part of how we had to cope with that as a society was to devalue the quality and the like how does that help for them to be home with their kids that much? And so we devalued that role of a mom in order to increase the value of women in the workplace. Because otherwise, if we say they're just as valuable, then you've got these women in the workplace that are you know, but then I'm missing out on this. And so there's more of a
Mm.
tension there. And so I think that that was honestly when it started, was that idea that we had to kind of devalue the women in the home in order to encourage women to be in the workplace. And it was like, but we can do both or neither, or there's a lot of different options in there. So I think that was a big part of it. I think another part of it is, there still are some anti-female biases, and it the primary parent still does tend to be the woman, and even in cases where a woman is working as many or even more hours than her male counterpart, we have found that she still takes on a lot more of the mental load and the practical load of the childbearing, and so how do you make that feel equal? Well, you put down how important that is, right?
Mm.
So if we put down how important that is, then it's okay. We can see it as equal again.
So you mentioned that you are a therapist. So do you see a lot of this kind of negative tension when you are talking, with your clients? I guess patients. I don't know what to call it. I guess I don't want
Yeah,
to like demean
it's
what it
okay.
is, but do you see a lot of this tension between, because I just feel like as a woman, it doesn't mean that just because we're moms, it doesn't hide away our hobbies and passions, but it's almost harder to find that balance between the two, because it's not like, especially, moms who work from home. There's a lot of moms who tend to do that, or try to have a little bit more of a flexible schedule versus your 9 to 5, so that they can stay home with their child, or that they can be there for, this event, that event. Like,
Hmm.
how does that tension play out when you're talking to these women?
I think one of the ways that it kind of plays out really commonly is in that mental load piece, is that well, so often women are coming to me struggling with the stress and the anxiety of their brains are even when they're at work, for instance, women toggle a lot between work and family life in their brains. So for instance, they might be like, work, 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 work. Oh, I need to put that on the grocery list. Work, work, work,
Mm.
work. Oh, I need to make that doctor's appointment. Work, 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 work. Oh, I got a phone call from the school. I need to double check the kid didn't fall off the, whatever. And work,
Yes.
work, work, work. Oh, I gotta go change a diaper. Work, work. They tend to do that. Whereas men tend to be able to single focus a lot better. So they're at work and they have those blinders on like a horse, and they're like, I am only focusing on work. And so a woman has to do that all day long and she's exhausted from it. And then a man is like, oh, I just got home from work. I'm tired. And she's like, you've no idea. And so there's just
Yes.
they don't tend to understand how much a lot of women just feel like they're taken for granted, and how much work they're doing is another big part of it. Whether you're a stay-at-home mom or a working mom, because so much of what we do is that invisible labor, is that, redundant, yeah, I did 500 loads of laundry this week or whatever. And it's like, you don't see this progress in life from it. You see, oh, we had clothing to wear. And so it can just be really easily
Mm.
ignored. So I think that there's so many pieces to that where a woman is carrying that burden of, they feel split between all their different roles. Oftentimes, women feel like, a working mom will feel like she's too distracted to give her all to work, so she feels like she's not doing as good of a job at work as she'd like to do. But then she's also feeling guilty because she's not just focusing on her kid. So it's like, you think you get the best of both worlds, when in reality, you kind of get the worst of both worlds as well.
So how do you usually, go about advising women through that situation? Because I feel like that's one of the top issues that I hear a lot is like, I need time to, be myself. I need time to go do this. I need time to go do that. I mean, I do exactly what you were talking about, and I work from home. I'm
Mm-hmm.
constantly like, I work for my dad from home. And so I'm watching, his show. He has a radio show, and I'm watching his stuff. But I'm also like usually typing out a grocery list at the same time, or I'm like texting my husband being like, oh, don't forget to do this, or I'm like
Mm-hmm.
listening in an earbud while I'm switching laundry, starting another. Like, what, how do you, but it feels like I have to do that. That's what it feels like, because I want to work and I want to be a mom, and these things need to get done, and I do like a podcast like this, for example, and I enjoy it. Like, how do you advise women who are dealing with this exact issue?
Yeah. So I think that there's two sides to it. The first side, I think acceptance is a powerful tool. So, for instance, accepting that our female brains do in fact work different than their male brains. Like, if we go way back in societies to like much earlier, like hunter gatherer kind of vibes, right? So you've got the man out there that's hunting, and he really needed his brain to focus on hunting, because otherwise either he's gonna miss the deer, or he's gonna, get injured. If he's at war, he needs to be focused on don't die, right? Like, he can't be thinking about, I wonder how my wife is back at home,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
It had to be fully present. So the men who survived all of those times were the men who could really well focus on one task. The women whose families survived were the women that were so good at multitasking, which is part of why our brains do that differently. So, like, go way back to, I always like think about, like, it's probably ridiculous, but I think about like this cave where like the woman's keeping the fire going, beating out the saber-toothed tiger rug, and making sure her kids don't fall off the cliff all at the same time.
Yes.
And that's like what she had to do in order to make sure life happened. Meanwhile, a man was like, deer must hunt, like.
Yes.
And that is essentially what we're still doing today, is man's going to work, and he's like, the modern version of deer must hunt, like work, 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 while the woman's doing the modern version of the fire, the rug, and the kids. And it's like, our brains do that. So the first piece is kind of accepting part of that is because that's an innate difference in how we've developed over time. And so there is part of it that is if we accept it, then we don't fight against it as much. And it's like, okay, I am going to do more of that. Like, now the flip side of that is that doesn't mean you have to do all the things. So then it's the communication piece. If you have a partner, if you have a, even if you're a single parent, figuring out how you can delegate to anybody else. But being able to have the communication and being like, I need to pass this piece to you. And I always recommend like having certain themes. Like, for instance, when you're talking about like chores or whatever, instead of every single day having to delegate, I need you to do this today, I need you to do this today, because again, that's the mental load piece, right? But saying, okay, can I delegate to you that all car maintenance will be your thing? You will pay attention to oil changes when they're due, you'll take them, or whatever, right? That's all yours. Or can I delegate to you all of the laundry, or all of
Mm.
the scheduling doctor's appointments? Like, it doesn't have to be a traditionally male. I just chose car first because so many people do say that their husbands take care of that. But like, it doesn't even have to be a traditional male. I have friends whose husbands are the primary cooks. And so they delegate to them the cooking. So that is their job. And so the wife is like, I don't even grocery shop because I don't know what he needs. And I'm like, that's amazing. So,
Yes.
but I think when you can like have these open conversations and saying, this is too much for me right now, I'm feeling like I have too much on my plate. Like, can you take this piece? A lot of
Mm.
times, husbands are happy to take it, but they're like, I just don't know what you need. And that's where I think if you can have the regular things that they're accountable for, so you don't have to delegate it every day. Like, okay, honey, I need you to do this today. It's like, no, your job is to take out the trash. So if you notice the trash is full, from here on out to the end of eternity, please just take it out. Like,
I feel like that's so interesting because you talk about how like men and women's like their brains work differently because I almost feel like as a woman I see things needing to be done as they're like coming into play. Like like it's almost like my like you were kind of using that analysis like my vision is like everywhere. I'm like scoping
mm-hmm,
the area and it can be different and both things are great and that's why men and women belong together because
mm-hmm,
sometimes you need to be the guy honing in on those things because sometimes as women we can be so all over the place that
mm-hmm,
we're like, "Oh, I completely even dodged that. I forgot about that."
mm-hmm.
And then vice versa. Sometimes they're so this that it's like you didn't see this over here. And I remember seeing something on Instagram that said, don't feel bad for asking your husband to do chores because it's his house too, or it's his room too. And it's something that really like almost changed how I felt about things because I feel like there's a lot of pressure on women to not only be moms or maybe not even in this economy having to work and bring in money as well, but also to be, the caretakers of the home. Like you also
Mm-hmm.
have to be cleaning the home and doing this to the home and doing that to the home. And it's like I just got to a point with my husband where I was almost getting like mad at him, but it wasn't mad. Like I wasn't angry at him. Like I was mad that I'm like, you really don't see this pile of crap right here? Like what about this pile of crap right there? I'm like, find a pile of crap and take care of it. And
Yeah.
it's like he's just like and like you just said, he was like honestly I don't know what you need like you and he
Mm-hmm.
basically was like if you just give me something I'll do it and it was
Mm-hmm.
like and so you saying that it's like these two like world I'm like seeing my worlds collide of like it's just communication is key because we see things in a completely different way
Yeah.
and so that kind of brings me to my next thought too is so that was kind of that's been my main issue as a mom.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really struggle with it because when I was just wife Anna, I was easy to do my job and then come home and I would just do whatever. And having a kid completely changes that in the best way because it's like
Mm-hmm.
before her, I'm like, what did I do? I must have been so lazy. I had too much time on my hands. And so, what are some other issues that moms tend to bring to you during your sessions that and again, I'm a very new mom, so I feel like maybe some of them I haven't unlocked quite yet. It's like
Mm-hmm.
levels in a video game. I'm still on like level 2 of my stuff. So what are some other issues that you see women bringing to you as moms?
Gosh, I see a lot of different stuff. I mean, first of all, moms are people. So any people, any kind of a issue that any person might deal with, a mom might deal with, right? It's just a lot of times when she's dealing with it, she's not giving herself the time and space to deal with it. And therefore, she's having to function at a lower level in all of her roles because she's not giving herself the break. So often she comes to me later than somebody who isn't a mom might, with whatever the same issue is. But I do a lot of perinatal mental health. I'm certified in perinatal mental health, such that, so like pregnancy, postpartum, birth trauma, all that kind of stuff. So all that realm. But then a lot of things one of the things that I often say is that motherhood brings out the best in us and the worst in us.
Mm,
So it can highlight those areas that we really still need some growth in. So you might think, oh, I'm doing really well in life. And then you have a kid and you realize everything's out of your control. And you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know I had control issues until I didn't have control over my life. And now I'm realizing it. So a lot of things kind of can get highlighted through the different phases of motherhood. One thing that comes up a lot is past traumas. And it can be your own childhood traumas as you're nurturing this new child. It could be recent traumas. It could be birth trauma. It could be, relational trauma. It can be so many things. But the way trauma impacts us puts us on edge, and it doesn't help us to function great in our role as mom. So healing traumas, whether they're from way long ago or more present, can make a big difference. So I do a lot of trauma work. I also do a lot of life transitions work. Motherhood is full of transitions, like you were talking about earlier. You go from like, I'm Anna to I'm pregnant Anna to I'm mom Anna. And it's like, who am I? And so there's a lot of
Mm.
identity pieces with that. But each time you transition, it's like, oh, I'm a mom of a toddler. Okay, I kind of get that. And then there's a new phase that your kid goes through. And then all your kids get into school and you're like, what do I do with myself now? And then like your kids become teenagers and you're like, whoa, what do I do with this? And then they leave the house and you're like, I just spent the last 20 years of my life focusing on being a mom and now they don't think they need me. And what do I do with myself? So there's like constant transitions in motherhood between accommodating their developmental stages, as well as we figure out who we are, whether we're working, staying at home, transitioning from one to the other. Like a lot of times that is a big part of transition. So there's a lot of that work. And then I think the other really big one that I deal with, people call it mom rage now. I've been treating it since before that was like a big term that people used, and
Yes.
I used to call it angry mom syndrome. So, inevitably, these really sweet ladies, they're like, I've never had an anger issue before in my life. And then they come into motherhood, and all of a sudden they're like, there's like this monster that pops out, and all of a sudden I'm like yelling at my kids and yelling at my husband, and I just feel filled with rage. And they're like really disturbed by it because they're like, I swear I've never been angry like this. But there's so many factors that can play into that. So I deal a lot with mom rage and helping moms to figure out what's underlying that rage and the pieces that we have control over, work through that. The pieces that we don't have control over, work through how to deal with the fact that we don't have control over it. But to be able to manage that, I'd say those would be my top ones. But like I said, any issue that's a human issue is an issue we might deal with moms.
So, what do you think the difference is? Okay, let me rewind because I have like a lot of thoughts going on in my brain about everything you just said. So, I mean, for starters, it brings out the best in us, it brings out the worst in us. I never realized that I had an issue with being patient until again I wasn't in control of like the things that I could be patient over or what I was choosing to do. And so certain things I'm like I lose it. And so it's like I when you were talking about that I was like, yeah, that's extremely true. And something that just kind of popped into my brain as you were talking, because we were talking about the difference between how men and women, see things, but I kind of want to touch on what the difference between how men and women, view each other, like kind of reflecting back. And, when I first gave birth to my daughter Autumn, I just noticed that people treated Stephen and my husband's name is Stephen and I differently in different ways, and sometimes it would be people coming and being like, oh, way to go, Dad, great job, Dad. And I'm like, okay, so let's take a breath. I don't really know, I love him, but what he did was like 9 months ago. I'm like, this guy's not done a thing, okay?
You're
Right?
like,
I'm like,
wait a
let's take a step back.
minute.
Yeah, you guys weren't even there for that. Let's take a step back.
Yeah.
Okay, and then it's like, but then, for example, when we go to the grocery store, and my husband takes my daughter Autumn, and he goes down an aisle. He's like, he said to me before, people are coming up to me being like, yeah, way to go, Dad, great job. And I'm like, okay, nobody's coming up to me at the grocery store when I'm holding my daughter Autumn saying, great job, way to go. I'm like, everybody's just kind of walking around me like it's a normal day, which never bothered me until he came up to me, and he came home from the store one night when I didn't go with him. And he told me, he's like, people just look at you weird when you're with a kid. And I'm like, they don't. They don't. And he's like, really? Because people, a couple people came up to me and were patting me on the back and all of this stuff. So what is the difference then, and how men and women are viewed once they become parents, and what does that do to a woman's mental health? Because if my husband and I didn't have the kind of relationship where we can, haha and joke about it, I would feel angry and I would feel upset and my feelings would be hurt because I'd
Hmm.
be like, I'm not getting this praise and this, attention to the things I'm doing. So how does that work?
Oh my gosh. It's so common. I actually have seen multiple memes about it, and like there's somebody I follow, Mom Life Comics, on Instagram, and she's done multiple posts and comics about this because it's so common. Like literally the exact same task that a mom does versus a dad does, and the dad will get praise and the mom will get like nothing, right? Like there's not even a
Mm-hmm.
comment made. It's not even like it's not that she's getting like discouragement. It's just they don't even make a comment. Like a mom goes to the grocery store with her baby, they're not like, "Oh, how great of you to bring the baby to the store." But a dad,
Yeah.
you totally get that. A dad goes for a walk with the baby. Same thing. Like, and I even
Mm-hmm.
caught myself doing it earlier. I saw a dad with like a kid in like a hiking backpack walking the dog, and I'm like, how great that he's doing that. I'm like, wait a minute, I've seen women do this 1,000 times. Why is my brain going there too? And it's because it's not the norm. The reality is, if we saw dads out there with kids just as often as moms, we wouldn't be as shocked by it. But we have generations upon generations of it being the mom's role to be with the kids that our brains are still trained that that's the case. I mean, there are still cases, I still hear dads saying things like, I can't tonight, I've got to babysit, and it's their own kids. And I'm like, I'm
It's
sorry,
like,
if you are with your own children, it is not babysitting. It
yeah,
is called
yes.
parenting. Like, what?
I've even found myself having to train myself out of that verbiage because I've even like go to the grocery store alone to just so, to make it go quicker. You get that.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband has been here with my daughter and I found myself and caught myself before I'm leaving like, "Oh, thanks so much for watching her." I'm
Mm-hmm.
like he's the 16-year-old babysitter
Yeah.
across the street. I'm like, "You're her dad. Why
Yeah.
am I doing this? Why am I thanking you? Watch your kid." You
Mm-hmm.
know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yeah. Like I tried to switch my language when my kids were little too. Instead of like you're watching her for me, especially not for me, because they're
Mm,
not watching her for me. You're watching her because she's your child. I would just say things like, just a heads up, you're on duty, because I wanted to make sure that they understood that so they wouldn't forget and just leave the house. Because that's another thing that women talk about. I was just talking about this week with one of my clients about how like her husband will just be like, "Oh, and we need something from the store," and we'll just leave. Like they don't say, "Hey, you good with the kid?" Like there's
mm.
automatically an assumption that they can leave without asking. But like women don't feel like we can do that. We've got to make sure, okay, you're watching the kid and like all these things. Men are so used to just going. And it's so common. I have not met many people. Honestly, I'm not sure if I've met anybody. I'm sure they exist where it's the opposite, where the man is like, "Okay, I'm going to the store. You've got the baby, right?" Like it, but the
Mhm.
other direction, we always do it. Like, and so even just that mental piece of it being the default that women are the ones that are taking care of the babies. Like simple things like if a dad shows up to parent teacher conferences, that people are like, "Oh, it's so great you're here," whereas the mom's expected to be there.
Mhm.
Or, when a dad chaperones a field trip, it's like, "Whoa, how cool that how cool that you would take time off for this." Meanwhile, all the working moms are taking time to chaperone as well, but no one's like, "It's so great you're here."
Yeah.
Like, it's all sorts of things that you see it time and time and time again where like actually I was at a field day today for one of my kids and I literally heard it like, "Oh, it's so good to see some dads here."
Yeah. They had a part in this. They had a part in this.
I'm
They
like,
should be here.
it's also so good to see all the moms here. Like, isn't that great that they made time in their life that it's not,
Mm.
So I think it's so common, and in so many ways it comes up time and time again. Whether you're talking about with newborn babies or elementary age kids, or you know, even back to school nights. I've had kids all the way through the spectrum. So like back to school nights in high school, you still see a ton more moms showing up, and it's like until it gets to the point where dads are stepping up and doing as much as moms are for those kinds of things, it's gonna be more shocking when it actually happens, and so people are gonna notice it.
So, I feel like as Christians, this can almost be a tougher topic to talk about. Because, if you are kind of the world, if you live a more secular lifestyle, it's not that crazy to you. most of the time, I would say at least, when dads do certain things because they're so interchangeable. There's really no moral root to your role. So you just kind of do whatever is done. But when you're a Christian, pardon me, when you are a Christian and you're kind of living in those roles that God put in place for you, which is, the mom and the dad, and I'm the mom and I'm submissive and I'm the caretaker of the home and you're the leader of the home and all that stuff. I almost feel like, and I've seen this from experience, I almost feel like that can kind of get abused in a way
Yeah.
where, especially like that word submissive, but then you become a mom on top of that. And it's like now it just gets even worse. Like people just don't understand what that truly means. And so do you see that, when it comes to people's faith and women's faith? Because I've even had conversations with women before where they're like, yeah, I don't really want to, for example, I don't really want to move, but, my husband, he says we have to. It's like, but you actually, you're in this marriage too. You actually have a voice, like you can say things. And then as parents, because we were just talking about people praising dads for doing some of the things that moms are doing. But, I see a lot of Christians where they do that because it's not normal or it's not, they're going out of their way because that's the biblical definition of our roles. So, talk to me a little bit about that. Do you see that with some of your Christian clients, this like having to almost like unhardwire their brains to be like, hey, it's okay to ask for help?
Yes. And I think, again, I kind of go back to, when we went from primarily women being stay at home to so many of us in the workplace, that it was kind of like it was an extra ball that was added to juggle. It didn't take away any of our other balls because we didn't say, oh, then that means that these men need to step up more. And so I think, in conservative Christian circles, there one of the things that I've seen is that like, oh, they might start out with like a really conservative model in the home where you've got like the head being the husband and the wife is submissive, and the wife might even get to be stay at home, maybe even get to homeschool, things like that. But then something shifts and all of a sudden mom needs to go back to work, but she's still expected to homeschool and she's still expected to hold all the same roles. And it's like those moms really struggle with it because then they're like, wait, so now I have to do everything? How is that him being the leader? Because if we're looking at him being the leader, that shouldn't be me doing everything. And so I think in some pockets that has been twisted and made into this like submissive means that like you let him do what he wants and you do everything else. And it's like that's not biblical either. So like, the Bible actually talks a lot about the role of a man and how he's supposed to be the head of a family. Well, the head of a family shouldn't be deferring to the wife to everything. Just saying. Like, the head of the family should be, involved in the day to day, and they should, know things like so many moms I'm like they're like, I don't even know if my husband would know like what the name of the pediatrician is or
Wow.
what the name when they're due for their next shots, like, or how to, some of them are like, I don't even know if my husband knows how to drive to the school. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So like I just feel like we've kind of distorted it over time. Like if we're going to look at healthy, even like a biblical manhood and womanhood, like yes, they are different, and they're both supposed to be very involved in the rearing of children.
And so I had this question written down, which is, what's your advice to women who are friends to mothers and maybe they aren't mothers themselves and don't know how to help? And I want you to answer that question, but I also want you to answer the question as well. What is your advice to women who are mothers and feel like they're drowning and they're listening to this conversation, because this conversation completely divulged into this realm that I didn't think we were going to touch, but I love it because I think it's been a great talk. But about, they're listening to this like, I feel like this with my husband. I feel like this with my partner. I feel like he's not helping and I don't know how to help. And so let's start with the first question, which is, what is your advice to those women who are listening to this and feel like they don't know how to ask for help, they don't know how to communicate?
I would say a lot of times when that's the case, it's because they feel like they're not supposed to have to ask for help, that they're supposed to be able to handle it all on their own. So the first thing is to remember that it is a new concept that we're supposed to be able to do this on our own. For the majority of human history, people have parented in communities, in tribes, in close knit towns where people had each other's back. So it is a very new modern concept in relation to human history to have to do it alone. So to first accept that you were never meant to do it alone. Like, you were meant to parent in community and to parent with other moms, with other, literally, like, think about old school tribes where, like, the kids
Mm.
kind of just ran around and, like, parents just parented each other's kids and took care of them. So, like, you were meant to ask for help. You were meant to offer help. So seeing it as a village, and I love, somebody once said, and I don't remember even who it was, but that you want to build your village and you have to be willing to be a villager as well. So, like,
Mm.
as a mom, being able to say, yeah, I'm going to ask for help and I'm going to offer it. And that's what balances it out so you don't have to feel guilty. Like, you know, I helped get a kid home today and I didn't feel like, oh, they owe me, but I'm like, who knows? Someday they might have my back for something else. And so, like, seeing yourself as part of a village means asking for help when needed and then offering help when you can give it. And when you can do that, it tends to balance out and you don't have as much guilt about it.
And then that was really good. I can see why you're a professional. And then what is your advice to women who are friends to mothers who are maybe listening to this as well, being like, wow, okay, this is a lot more than I thought. They seem to have it all together and they may really not. What is your advice to them about how they can go about helping their mom friends without also, because again, as moms, we feel like we should have a handle on it. And so, right when I first became a mom, when people would ask me for help, I'd be like, no, no, no. And I'd almost take it as an insult sometimes when people would be
Mhm.
like, well, let me do this for you. Like, I couldn't handle it myself. So, what is your advice to them?
Yeah. So, some of the things that have been really helpful to me on my motherhood journey is one of my best friends in the world. She would come over and hang out with me, and I would seriously just sit there and clean while she just talked with me the whole time. So, like, just being willing to enter into their world and not always expecting them to leave the home with their kids or to get a babysitter to come hang out. So, like, she would sit at the table, my kitchen table, and I would literally clean my kitchen, but we'd have this quality conversation. We weren't even like, who knows what we'd be talking about, but we'd be just connecting. And I got my whole house, my whole kitchen cleaned, and as soon as I did, we'd move to my bedroom and I'd fold laundry while we were talking. And I was not expecting her to, like, do my chores, but her just being there. So, like,
Mm.
being willing to enter into their world and not expecting them to always have to leave it is huge. I think other things, like just understanding that, like, especially if your friend that's a mom is a newer mom and most of your friends aren't moms yet, is that she is, undergoing a pretty huge transition. Yes, her priorities are going to be different. Yes, she is going to want, you know, to go to bed earlier or whatever. But the other thing I would say is don't stop inviting her to things. Because even if she keeps saying no, keep inviting her. Because one of the things that I often see with moms is because they're busy or because they don't have babysitting or whatever, they say no, and then people stop inviting them to do things.
Mm.
And then they lose that connection. So something as simple as just keep inviting them, even if they say no. Like, keep inviting them. Show up to them. Like, some of the helpful things is just being there. Like, we don't, as moms, I don't need somebody necessarily to come over and clean my house. I mean, maybe if I've just had surgery or just had a baby, that would be awesome. But, like, sometimes it's just the presence that we're looking for and the connection and not feeling isolated. So things that lead to your mom friend not feeling isolated because now she has kids would be a huge blessing.
So, talk to me about your podcast, the Everyday Supermoms podcast. What is a supermom? Can I be a supermom? Can any of these people listening be a supermom? Talk to me about it.
Yes. So I have loved the idea of supermoms for a really long time. And I personally take the title myself. I am a supermom. And I do believe every mom can be a supermom. I do not believe every mom is, because frankly, there are some bad moms out there, some neglectful, abusive, some really not good moms. So I do not go as far as saying every mom is a super mom.
Yeah.
Sorry,
It's
they're
like
not.
there's not.
Like,
Yeah.
I used to work for child protection. They're not all super moms. However, I do believe that every single mom can be a super mom. And so my definition of a super mom is that she is intentional about her role as a mom. She is intentional about raising kids who are going to turn into good humans. And she is creating a motherhood that really fits with who she is. So instead of trying to create some vision of what a supermom is based on social media or movies or what box she thinks she should put herself in based on how her friend mothers or how her mom mothers or how her sister mothers, looking at who she was made to be. Who was she designed to be? Her gifts, her strengths, her personality, her values. And when she can live a life that's in line with that, she's going to raise amazing humans. And so that, to me, a supermom is somebody who often is facing some really hard stuff. She makes mistakes. She owns her mistakes and she grows from it. Like, these are not perfectionists. They're not the moms that are doing 3 billion things, though maybe they are sometimes. But they're not like picture perfect moms, but they are
Mhm.
moms that take their role seriously and make a huge difference in the lives of their kids because of it.
That's beautiful. Especially the part about owning your mistakes, because I think trying to live up to this standard, like you were talking about, this caricature mom, the Disney Channel mom, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
for
Yeah.
us, is like the mom that always has the like 5-course breakfast and is dressed to the nines and
Mm-hmm.
makeup to the nines, and just never really, it's like there's no flaw. It's like
Yeah.
I've also found that to be important, because I was homeschooled growing up, and just with my siblings looking up to me and showing them, like, I'm not a perfect person. There's nobody perfect in this world, but also, talking with them and just like wanting to set that standard for my own daughter as well, where it's like, mom's going to make mistakes, but I'm here to apologize, for them. I think that's beautiful. And so on your podcast, what's been one of, or maybe some of the craziest or most fun conversations that you've ever had?
Oh my gosh, I've had so many great ones. I was trying to count how many. Um, I think I'm at like 32 interviews that have gone live. I'm at like 49 episodes, I think. I don't know. Hard.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Like, and counting, I do 2 a week. So every week I have an interview, and every week I have my own, like, I call them Supermom shorts that are just 10 minutes ish, that I share a nugget of wisdom. It could be something that week I talked about with clients at work or something, and I want to
Mm-hmm.
share it with the world. But in my interviews, I have talked to so many amazing moms, and I'm trying intentionally to have them be so vastly different because, like, again, there's not like a perfect mold to a super mom. So I think that some of the ones that have inspired me a lot, I loved one of the earlier ones we did about mom rage. It's a friend and colleague of mine, so she's even a therapist, and she talks about how she struggled with mom rage. So I love how authentic she was, and it wasn't trying to be like, I'm a therapist and I've got it all figured out.
Mm-hmm.
So I really loved that episode. I did another episode that was super powerful that was about a woman who actually got out of the sex trafficking industry
Wow.
and later became a mom, got married, became a mom, and came to faith also. And so for her, like, just seeing how that background did not keep her from living a great life and being an amazing mom. And so, like, some of those are really powerful. Um, One of the things that I love is I tend to be able to find something I can connect with any person on. And so, like, literally every person, I'm like, yeah, I totally get that. Yep, I totally get that. And I'm just like, I feel like that's one of the powers of hearing stories and that's so much of my heart behind my podcast, is that oftentimes moms feel alone in things. They feel like, I must be the only mom that's ever felt this way. So I think hearing other people say, I dealt with this thing, I overcame it, and life is okay. Like,
Mm.
so like, even some of the really hard things that people have talked about, like, I've done a couple episodes where I've interviewed moms who have lost children. Like, that's all hard. That's like every mom's greatest fear. And it's like, so talking about that and like facing that, and them being able to say, and there's hope and there's healing. Like, that to me is so powerful. Or like the moms that are saying, I feel like I'm not good enough. Or the moms that are saying, I'm exhausted 24/7. Or I don't know, I went through a phase where I didn't know who I was. Or this was not what I expected. I thought I was going to love being a mom, and I wasn't loving it. But then I figured out some tweaks and now I do. Like, so like I think for me the power is really just in being able to look at other moms and how they're doing it and see how vast differences it can be, but how it can all be beautiful when people are, determined to overcome whatever baggage, whatever past, whatever struggles they have to be an amazing mom for their kids.
That's awesome. That's incredible. I like I said earlier, I have never done anything so amazing than, giving birth to my daughter, and just the idea of a woman's body, being created for that and being able to do that. And you're sitting there like, I can't do this, and your body's like, well, you're gonna, and just like watching and waiting and doing all that stuff. I mean, it is genuinely the most beautiful journey, especially just how we've talked on the show about the things that we juggle, the multiple hats that we wear. And I have not yet experienced having a child while being pregnant with another child. That will be a new level unlocked that I'm not ready for quite yet.
Yeah, there is no longer just sleep when you're tired as you're pregnant, because that's exactly when your toddler starts whacking you in the face. So
yeah, we are just entering toddler stage with my daughter. She was not walking, went to bed one night, woke up, and has just decided, like, I walk now. And now she walks everywhere, and it's genuinely the most terrifying thing. And it's so like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And so, anyways, as we kind of close out, what is your number one piece of advice to, the moms out there, whether a new mom, whether a seasoned mom? What would be your piece of advice to them?
yeah. I would just say that motherhood is kind of like a giant experiment in a lot of ways. So embracing that sometimes you're gonna mess it up. Embracing you're gonna make mistakes. You're not gonna be perfect. And if something you try isn't working, pivot. It's okay. Try something else. Because, you only have one kid so far. I have 4 bio kids plus 2 grown stepsons and 2 grandbabies now. So, like, I have watched so many kids in so many different situations, and I can tell you, just when I thought I figured it out, the next kid would be totally different. And so, like, whether it's from one kid to the next or one stage to the next, it's like constantly trying to figure out, now what do I do? And so, if you go into it seeing it as like an adventure, an experiment, and kind of being like giving yourself permission to mess things up, giving yourself permission to forgive yourself. I think that's where moms struggle the most, is like, can I forgive myself if I fall short? Like, forgive yourself if you screw something up, and make it better. Apologize to your kids. Fix it. Move forward. Because that's when we have the growth, and that's when our kids learn a lot too. When they watch us, like, oh, mom screwed that up and she apologized and she fixed it and she moved forward. Huh, maybe I could do that too. So, like, instead of expecting yourself to get it right away, be okay with, maybe I won't. Like, very few decisions we make in life are so high stakes that we have to get them right the first time. Very few things. Most things we can change our mind, we can pivot, we can, go a different direction. So, like, you choose to breastfeed and it is a terrible thing for all involved, or you don't produce enough milk or whatever, you can pivot. You choose to not give your kid vaccinations, and you choose to give them later. Or the opposite, you start giving them vaccinations and you choose to change your mind. You choose to homeschool, you put them in public school. So many decisions, we can pivot. And so giving yourself that permission, whether it's with decisions or mistakes you make, it'll make all the world of difference.
I love that. I just feel like there's so much pressure, and honestly, I hate it, but sometimes there's so much pressure from other moms. It's like I've asked myself this question over and over again in my head. Like, you guys are moms, or even sometimes from older women who have grown kids. They'll constantly look at you and tell you I'm like, do you guys not remember what this was like? I'm like, why are you guys
No,
talking like this?
they don't.
Like, what is
There's
happening?
an amnesia that happens with it.
And, again, I really appreciate you coming on. I'd love to have you on again, because I think that this was a great conversation. I feel like we could have had like a 4-hour episode if we went down every mom route that there possibly was. That there
I have
possibly
so
was.
many passionate topics. I'd love to come back.
Thank you. And tell people where they can listen to you and follow you and do all that stuff.
Yeah, so check out Everyday Supermoms, and it's on all the major podcast platforms. And then I would love it if you would want to follow me at Hey Amy Grace on Instagram, and that's where I post things about my podcast. And if you get on my newsletter, you get like summaries of the different podcast episodes, as well as deals on things that I'm doing out there. And I've got all sorts of things coming up, so.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And this was Let's Talk, episode 22. Let's talk about supermoms.